Thank you, everyone. First on the agenda is adopt the agenda.
Mr. President, I move we adopt the agenda as presented.
I second.
Motion been made to second to adopt the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Next on the agenda is the recognition and presentation.
Thank you.
Rich?
This evening, we are honored to have with us a few state representatives that are going to offer a recognition of Coach Moore and their successful football program. So Coach, if you could come up here, and I know, would you like to say a few things?
Sure.
Great.
I thought you were talking to Coach, he never misses.
I don't want to say.
Don't give him the mic.
So I'm Representative Michelle Davis, and this is Representative Peggy Mayfield. We're also, Representative John Young couldn't make it tonight, and Senator Jack Sandlin couldn't make it as well. But we all worked together to create a resolution of the State House and the General Assembly recognizing we did this last year too, but recognizing both years as the undefeated football team, state champions 2 years in a row. What an awesome program you all have here at Center Grove. And we just wanted to take a minute to recognize that and let you know that we recognize that at the State House as well with the General Assembly. So very proud of you. You do good work. You have a great leader. My son played for him, so I'm a little biased. So just wanted to take this chance just to share that. Each player and coach will get a copy of the resolution. I can read it if you want.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. It's 7 pages, yeah. House Concurrent Resolution number 38, introduced by Representatives Michelle Davis, Peggy Mayfield, John Young, sponsored by Senator Jack Sandlin. Adopted by voice vote on March 8, 2022, during the second regular session of the 122nd General Assembly. A House Concurrent Resolution congratulating Center Grove Trojans football on their undefeated season and winning the IHSAA 2021 Class 6A state championship. Whereas Center Grove Trojans football achieved their second consecutive undefeated season, going 28-0 through the 2020 and 2021 seasons. Whereas the Center Grove Trojans football team has won back-to-back state championships. Whereas Center Grove football won the IHSAA 2021 Class 6A state championship game with a final score of 27-21 over Westfield High School. Whereas Indiana Football Hall of Fame coach Eric Moore won his 4th state championship as head coach of Center Grove football. Whereas the Center Grove Trojans football team has demonstrated hard work, preparation, resiliency, and tremendous teamwork. And whereas Center Grove Trojans football has made the community proud, representing the community with class and dignity. Therefore, be it resolved by the House of Representatives of the General Assembly of the State of Indiana and the Senate concurring, that the Indiana General Assembly congratulates Center Grove Trojans football on their undefeated season and winning the IHSAA 2021 Class 6A state championship.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Are you gonna say no?
I know, that's why I'm doing it. You want to put the bomb?
Great, thank you.
Except for when you play more school arts.
Yeah. Thank you. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Peggy and Michelle, for taking the time out of your evening tonight to come here for that. That was wonderful. Thank you. The next on the agenda is public comments. Our board policy states public comments for the evening can be addressed to the board for items we're taking action on this evening. We do have 2 people signed up for public comments, but neither one of those are for action items we will be taking action upon. So with that being said, we're going to move on to the next agenda item, which is reports.
Excuse me, I'm signed up to speak on,
Action items only.
action item, safety and discipline report. That's what I signed up to speak on.
We're moving on.
The board doesn't take action on
Yeah,
it.
we don't take action on reports. We only take action on action items. Reports?
Okay, thank you. The first report this evening, Dr. Long is going to share with you the annual safety and discipline report. Dr. Long?
Thank you. Thank you. Tonight, we are fortunate to have Lieutenant Beck with us from the Center Grove Police Department. And Lieutenant Beck's going to cover the police reporting information, and then I will cover the student discipline part. So I'd like to introduce Lieutenant Beck.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for letting me come. If you could just roll through the slides, and we'll just hit them as we go. So Center Grove, we take pride in making sure that we do a good job both in the schools and outside of the schools on the street. And so as you can see right here, CGPD, we have had in 2021, 2022, we've had 391 runs total. And without of that, it has resulted in 59 various arrests, whether that be filing charges or outright arrests. You can go to the next one. Yep. Within our arrest, this is kind of a breakdown as to what we normally see. It ranges across the board. A lot of it is battery, criminal mischief, possession of marijuana, or that also includes THC or those kind of devices. So all of that is encompassed here. That makes up the 59 arrests, either filed or outright, that we had this year. Through the department, we have 3 canines. Canine Ito is a bomb dog. Canine Ozzy, which is my dog, he tracks narcotics and weapons. And then Canine Lampayo is a narcotics only. Within that, we've had 9 deployments or searches. Basically, those are when we're invited into a school, we conduct a search, whether that be of the cars or of lockers or of book bags. The dogs perform a search, and then from that, we take action if needed. This year, it didn't result in any arrests from that. Those canines did not find anything of illegal nature that any particular person had in their possession. Another bonus to having the canines is that we can perform school presentations. So within the school year, we've done 8 presentations at different grade levels, everything from elementary to middle to high school, just showing the dog, what it can do, how it works, how the nose works, and all the different ins and outs of what the dog can do. And then within the 73 training hours, that encompasses training of the dog, because those dogs, just like us, if we don't stay in shape, run, lift weights, eat right, then we can get out of shape. Same with the dog. So the dog has to go through training throughout the year, and that's what is represented by the 73 hours. So the citations, those are traffic stops. So when I say we patrol the inside and the outside of the schools, these are traffic stops that we make. The blue column in 2021, 2022 represents warnings that we give. I'm sure if anybody's driven before and you meet a nice cop and they give you a warning, you want to say thank you. We live in a community where we want to help the community, so we do offer warnings, but we also have to uphold the law and offer citations as well. So within that, we had 81 total contacts, 40 of which were warnings, 41 of which were citations. And then as law enforcement, you have to have training throughout the year. We would be very foolish if we thought we knew everything and we just showed up to work and did what we thought was best. So all year long, we go to different trainings. There's a bunch listed there. We participate in all sorts of trainings. We're mandated to have 24 hours of ongoing training. That's from the state. And then on top of that 24 hours, we perform multiple hours of training. As a matter of fact, we just did an active shooter training a couple weeks ago that was lights out. It was absolutely the best training we've ever been to. But all of that is just to make us better officers for the students and the staff. And that's all of my piece. So,
Don't know if
you
you
guys
wanted to
have any
ask
questions?
questions for Lieutenant Beck now before we go on to the rest of it.
Well, just, I know at times we get called for off-campus work things, because the deputy sheriffs might be busy on something. So we do shared duties.
Yes, we work really closely with both Bargersville, Greenwood, and Johnson County because our district where we can patrol actually goes anywhere the buses can go. And so if there's an accident up at County Line with one of our buses at County Line and 135, we're gonna respond to that. So not everything happens within the school buildings. Like I said, we patrol the streets and the schools, and so some of our off-campus calls are represented in those runs. But it's an all encompassed department, so that we do help with Johnson County, Bargersville, Greenwood, those guys.
We had a bus get run into on County Line Road, and we had Greenwood Police there, Center Grove Police there, and the Perry Township Schools came just to see if they could support. I mean, we're really appreciative of all the law enforcement agencies that help us, and then we in turn can help them too sometimes.
How's life in the new EOC?
It's good. It's good. Yeah, we figured out that TVs put off a lot of heat. And so our monitoring room we had like 7 fans blowing in to try to cool it down, but we've got it under control, I think. So, yeah, it's working out great. We really appreciate it.
Good.
Anybody else have any
I
questions?
just want to say thank you for everything you do and all your other officers do.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I am glad to see the dogs that you guys have,
Yeah.
because I've heard from multiple students and administrators and teachers here that those dogs kind of give a good opening for children to feel comfortable with the police officers and kind of break that ice, I guess, so that now they feel comfortable with that officer. So if there's ever an issue, there's ever a concern that student has, they feel like they've got a friend in that person and they can kind of go to them. So not only do they provide what you said, they also kind of provide some other things too, I think, the dogs. So anyway, thanks again for everything you do and your whole team. Seriously,
Appreciate it.
thank you.
so much. Thank you, board. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you, Lieutenant Beck.
Okay, we'll go on and talk a little bit about student discipline in our schools. This is just a list of incidents by type and what grade level they happen in. You can see the high school, 873 incidents, middle school, 733, and the elementary, 422. Not surprising, the numbers, when you look at the sizes of the schools and the reasons for an entry to be made. We talk about this every year with the other category. These are DOE reporting categories, and so and we'll talk about it a little bit later. So there are multiple offenses that fall under other. That's why it looks odd that 535 out of the 733 are other, but I'll break that down a little bit more for you on the next slide. Thank you. In-school suspensions and out-of-school suspensions. You can see, again, the high school has the most, but they again have the most students. That's the number of days. That's not necessarily the number of students that have served an in-school suspension. And then the same thing with out-of-school suspensions. I think our schools really try hard to make sure we don't suspend kids out of school. Obviously, it's tough to learn if you're not in school, so they work really well with the students trying to keep them in school. Go ahead. So these are the reasons for the high school in-school suspensions and out-of-school suspensions. You can see, defiance by far the biggest category that we have. Don't know that that's something that's a particular problem at Center Grove than it is in any other school corporation, especially with high school kids, and most of you have all had high school kids, so you know what it's like to have a high school kid. 231 attendance, I think that for me, that's the other item that sticks out a lot for us, and we work really hard with the Family Resource Program through the Johnson County to try to limit that, and we've worked hard, and Dr. Nelson's been working really hard to align our three level attendance policies and get everybody on board with the Family Resource Program. We had this spring, we had a meeting with the prosecutor and the judge and probation and the family resource people to talk about attendance and what we can do to further that, because everybody knows that kids need to be in school. It's the best way to learn. It keeps you out of trouble, especially at the high school age if you're in school. Middle school suspensions, again, these are the others, that category of other. 68% of those were basically inappropriate acts. Aggressive behavior was 90 of them. Disruptive behavior, 63. Inappropriate language, 45. Insubordination, 35. And disrespect, 29. So that's what kind of fills in that other. And so you can see why it's large. It has a lot of broad categories in there. Elementary suspensions. The other, I don't have my notes on that. Just, again, the same types of other things for the elementaries as well. You know, I think if anything, we're seeing our numbers grow a little bit at the elementary level with discipline. But I think that our deans and our assistant principals and principals work hard with the parents to try to keep that down to a minimum, and with the teachers as well.
Is that proportional, Dr. Long, with our student growth?
You know, that's a good question. I'll have to go back and look at our the previous years. You know, we've given this report for probably 4 or 5 years, and let me go back and look and get back to you, if you don't mind.
No, don't mind.
Okay. So expulsions, the high school, we had 20 alternatives to expulsion, and 5 at the middle school, and actual expulsions 10 and 8. And I think this is an area that I'm really proud of, because the schools have worked super hard to try to keep kids in school, and they're coming up with ideas as an alternative to expulsion, and probably almost every single time the parents agree to it because they know that they need to be in there. So those numbers have gone down. There was a year, it's probably been 8 or 9 years ago, I think we did 59 expulsion hearings. So our numbers have gone down significantly with that. So, I don't know, Jason, do you want to talk about this just a little bit? This is the report that Mr. Hubbard has been anxious to hear. Not the expulsion one, the next one. Do you want to go to the next slide? The SRO app. So this year we got an app for our SROs to carry around with them that can record any kind of contact with any student. And we wanted to share that information, and we have a whole year's worth of that information. And I think this is really good information, because not all of our contacts with our students are in a negative light. In fact, a lot of them are in developing relationships, and Jason can talk to you a little bit about those.
Yeah, so the NASRO mentality is a triad, and that's counseling and mentoring, that's guest speaking, and most important, the law enforcement side of it. So the app allows us to track that more on a real time. So if we're having conversations with kids, we leave, we can just pull the app out, you know, make a note of it, and then it's trackable data, so that, you know, people are like, well, you're just a school cop, what do you do all day? Well, I do a lot, actually. I interact with kids. So what you're seeing here is, so to do the law enforcement portion of it, I mean, that's what we do every time we wake up in the morning and put the belt on. So the law side of it was represented in the runs that I presented earlier. So within these graphs, it's not that law enforcement portion of the triad isn't there, but what we did put in there is traffic control, just so that, you know, it makes sense when you guys see us with our lights on and we're directing traffic, and how much time that actually does take. So within the months, it's broken down, and this is all done by hours. So the white little section is the guest speaking. Usually at the beginning of the year, we allow the teachers to get used to the classrooms, to get the students used to the teachers. So we don't want to interject too much in bombarding them with, hey, can I read a book to your class? Can I present a K-9 to your class? So the first couple months, we try to tailor the amount of guest speaking. However, what we do on the back end of that is more counseling and mentoring. So anytime we go into a school the first couple months and kids are still learning the classrooms or learning the teachers or having a hard time coming off of summer to get into the school, we pull them aside. We talk to them when they're in the hallways. If they're trying to do math in the elementary schools and they're sitting down at one of the tables, we'll sit down next to them and just try to help them out. So that counseling and mentoring side is represented in the red section. The red section is per month. That's how many times we have those contacts with the students. And then the gray section is just the amount of time that we have spent out directing traffic. So as you can see, the months as they go get a little hairier. The traffic control gets a little smaller because you've got Christmas break, Thanksgiving break, and all of that. So the traffic goes down, but the student connection goes up. Because now we're developing those relationships with the kids. We're allowed to have more interaction with them. We actually look for those interactions. Now we've made connections with students who, maybe have piqued our interest a little. So we try to pull them aside and shoot baskets with them, or whatever the case may be. So you'll see that. And then second semester is where we really start hitting the classroom harder. So in January, for example, we spent 7.5 hours teaching, whether it be K-9 presentations, how a bullet travels through the air, the amendments, or we guest speak. I taught art class one time this year. That was fun. Kids learned how to draw a really spectacular stick figure. But so you'll see that the classroom time picks up within the second semester. But we really, the thing I think, in my opinion, the biggest impact that we can have as SROs is that student mentoring and informal counseling portion of it. I tell the guys all the time, if that number ever gets lower than the traffic control or whatever, we're in trouble, because that is our key. That's what makes an SRO an SRO, is being able to connect with those students. And we do that from the elementary levels all the way up to the high school levels. So April, I know I had to talk with the guys because there's 57 hours of student mentoring and 60 hours of traffic, so we had to talk. So if you see the next slide, it should jump way up, or maybe not way up, but close. But all total, at the end of the year, we spent 522.5 hours of traffic control, 43 hours of actual guest speaking, and then 391.5 hours of student mentoring. And so that's what I take pride in, is that student mentoring section. So you guys have any questions about that?
Where do you log your time in pre-planning and what you're doing tonight? Does that go under guest speaking? I know
That goes
you
in
guys
my
do
back pocket.
pre-plan and incident plans.
No, we have every Monday, we have a meeting that we just sit down and lay out what the week looks like. We talk about, where we're at with students, and it's a time for me to connect with the other officers to see what they have, if they have any issues, and so that's kind of where we put the plan in place.
I guess my point is, there's more than just these three big buckets that you guys are doing.
Oh, right, yeah, absolutely.
That this doesn't represent that I think you should get credit for.
No. No, we do a lot. And this is just something that's trackable data, right? So if we meet kids for lunch, that's part of the student mentoring. But if we go to a football game and we see the kids in the stands and we have conversations with the kids as they're playing, throwing a football with them as they're passing around underneath the bleachers, even though I know footballs aren't allowed in the stadium, I understand that. But that's the kind of thing that I think you're getting at. That
Yeah.
we don't track that, but it still has value. And so I'm blessed to be a part of Center Grove's SRO program because of the connection that we get to have with the kids on a daily basis. So, sir.
I'm going to say this word wrong. What is the avenue for kids to do Anonymous reporting.
Well, next slide.
I got one question about that
Segue.
slide.
Yeah, go ahead.
That pie chart, is
Back
that,
that up.
is that all officers together, I'm assuming, that's the whole?
It is, yeah.
Now, do you guys keep track of each individual officer to kind of see where you can coach other officers?
Yes.
Like, hey, spend more time doing this or that?
Yes, we do,
Okay.
yes. It's all, within the app, it breaks down as to what officers are reporting and responding and all that stuff. So yeah, that's something that I can look at as a lieutenant, kind of coach them if they need a little more help with classroom instruction or making sure that they're getting in the schools and having those connections with the kids. But that's done on like a Monday morning type roll call, to what Mr. Alexander's point was. So, but yeah, this is just total what we all do every month.
Okay.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yes, sir?
Okay, go ahead. So we have an anonymous reporting. Thanks, Mr. Russell, for queuing that up there. We've not reported on this before, so I thought this would be a good addition for this report. If you want to go ahead and go to the next slide. So we had 77, is that right? Yeah, 77 anonymous reports, and the categories they break them down into are bullying, harassment, intimidation, safety, or just a general tip. And the people that submit that click on what that category is. We didn't put those in those categories. So, if we went back through, we could probably take most of the general tips and put it either in safety or bullying and harassment. But I wanted to present what we showed from the data when we pull the data. I think one of the things that we talked about when we were looking at this is a lot of these came from secondary, which is probably understandable. But we want to make sure that we communicate with our elementary parents and even our older elementary kids about having this. We push it out to all their devices. It's listed in their handbooks, but I don't know that everybody is fully aware of the ability to do this.
Website.
Yeah,
It's a website.
yeah, they click on it
It's
and,
an app they can download on their phone.
yeah.
They don't need to.
It's-
It just takes them right to the web and they fill the form out.
Right, and it's on our website. Stacy's put a link on our website, so if you wanted to, you could click on it, and it takes you right there to submit an anonymous report. But I would like to see us push this a little more to get more information from parents. It goes to the building principals or an assistant principal, whoever they've delegated, and it also goes to me. And then if it's not responded within a few hours, I get another notice saying, hey, that report, number 278 hasn't been acted on yet. And then so sometimes, but if I see it, I won't wait for the building principals to, depending on what it is, I'll forward it to Chief Jackson, say, hey, you need to get on this right away. Let's not wait for a building administrator to contact you.
Dr. Long, how long have we had the anonymous reporting?
I would think about 3 years. Does that sound about right?
Maybe older than that.
Well, they've changed names, so it may be a little bit longer.
Seeing it being used more?
We have been. We did early, in the first semester, we did a lot really early. And then it kind of tapered off again, kind of like Jason's charts. It tapers off again, and then it starts to pick back up again. And so it ebbs and flows.
So we're going in the right direction, people knowing it's.
I think so. I think we can do a little bit better job of promoting that out to make sure people are aware of it. And maybe it'll keep the school board from getting emails and if we submit an app or a report.
Just, not to be overly picky, but backing up on this, the other category that you mentioned in the earlier slide.
Sure.
I appreciate you giving us verbally what those were. I would ask next year if you could include that somewhere on the slide so we can see the kind of subcategories of other. You know what I'm talking about? It's
Sure, yes.
Well,
I mean, general tip
Just-
covers a whole lot.
well, just so we can visualize it instead of just hearing it, if we could on that.
Yeah, I think I want to work, Dr. Nelson and I have talked about a way when we do the reporting, if there's a way we can have that pulled out rather than have to go through all 533 and put a little, count a little tally mark by each one of them, which is what my assistant Lynn did. So I think there's a way that, yeah, but we've already talked about that, Dr. Nelson and I did.
Next slide 12, but yeah, I appreciate that. I do appreciate you giving those numbers this year, because I think we hit you with that question last year, so thank you very much. That's helpful.
Yeah, I appreciate Lynn pulling, doing the little tally marks for me, so,
Give credit where credit is due.
that's right. That's the end of our reports, if there are any more questions, or my report anyway.
Any questions?
No, sir.
Okay, next on the agenda, items consent agenda.
No, we still got another report.
We have two more reports.
Circuit breaker presentation.
I know, I wonder.
Yeah,
That's what
Dr. Gabriel will present this for you this evening, and Dr. Gabriel, this will be
hand.
your last report to the board this evening.
Oh, I know, that's what I told
Yes, I'd like to talk a little bit tonight about the impact of circuit breaker losses on our district. Something we haven't really talked about before, but we're in the process of preparing next year's budget right now, and this turns out to be an important factor that we thought we should mention. Next. So to start with, what is a circuit breaker loss at a very high level? And it starts with taxpayers have a constitutional limit on their tax bill. And when the taxpayer reaches that constitutional limit, they just don't pay the rest of their tax. And various units of government lose out on that revenue. And just to give an example, and this is a very generic type of an example. If you think about a home with an assessed value of $600,000 and $500,000 of that is taxable after various deductions. If they live in an area with a rate of tax rate of $2.20, which is what some of our districts has, and that represents, of course, their total rate for all of taxing units, then you can see the calculation for the tax bill. It would be $11,250. But homeowners have a limit of 1% of their assessed value. In this case, 1% of $600,000 would be $6,000. So that would be what the taxpayer would pay. And the difference of $5,250 would be a loss to the various government units. And this tax rate, again, represents all the government units that would be collecting taxes. So that would be the school system, the appropriate fire district, the city or town if they were in it, the county, the library, the waste management district, the fire department, all those various units of government would share in that loss for this particular homeowner, and this applies by the county does this calculation for every parcel individually. And we've used a data analysis firm to help us better understand this data and kind of do a little bit of a deeper dive into it. Next slide. So just to put some perspective on this, I like to show this chart. This is our tax rate for the last 13 years, and we've maintained a very level tax rate during that time, and feel as if we should be able to continue to do that going into the future. If you look at what's happening with losses.
Slide for you, Dr. Gator.
What's that?
Can you frame that slide?
Yeah, right.
We can all sign.
Right.
It would be.
The next slide. So if you look at what's happened with the circuit breaker loss, this chart shows the dollar amount of the loss which we as a school district received in each year. And we just in the last couple months got the figures for 2022. And as you can see, 2022 is a much different year. That dotted line is the mathematical trend line of what's been happening with circuit breaker losses. And this year, we really had a pretty significant jump. And that was kind of the reason for us to bring this to everybody's attention, because this is clearly going to have an impact as we develop our budget for next year. Unfortunately, not a very good impact. So if you can go to the next. Is there another slide?
After this one?
Yes. Okay, I'm sorry, yeah, go back. I'm sorry, I had an older version of this. So obviously, people want to know, well, what happened in 2022 that's so different than the other years? And in looking at trying to dig into the data, there are a number of factors that have an interaction, but primarily you're talking about the assessed value and the tax rate. And what we've determined in digging into this is that the really critical factor in 2022 was the tax rate. And this chart shows the increase percentage in tax rates in the various taxing districts. So we have 6 or 7 taxing districts. That just is based upon where you live, and your tax rate is based on that. I mean, you either live in the county or in the township or in Bargersville or Greenwood or neither, and all those things affect your tax rate. But what you're looking at is the increase percentage. That you see the height of the bar represents the total increase in tax rate across those districts, and the red portion is the increase that was pretty small for us this last year, 0.8 cents on our rate. So of that total rate increase, you can see the small part that was due to us. And as we looked at the data, this is the principal reason that we've seen such a significant increase in the dollar amount of circuit breaker losses in our district. Now we're ready for those. This is the last one. So what does this mean? Well, we're in the process of developing our budget for next year, and unfortunately, that's going to be an additional $600,000 in tax revenue that we were projected to receive that we won't receive next year. In our operations fund, tax revenue for next year was originally projected to go up by $500,000. But in fact, it's going to go down by $100,000. So for next year, we will need to cover this loss with increased funding from the funding formula, which is based on the number of kids and what the state legislature provides to us through the funding formula. And for 2023, we will be able to do that. That simply means we have less money to spend on other things we'd like to spend it on. But that will be how we'll cover it in 2023. If this happens again, it's very difficult to say what we will do to cover that loss, but we've got it taken care of for this year. Fortunately, the data analysis firm that we're looking at is predicting that it will not be this bad the year after that, in 2024. So hopefully if that prediction is accurate, we should be in better shape than we are looking at 2023. So that's just a summary of something we really haven't talked very much about at the Center Grove District before, but as you can see, it's something we're going to have to really consider and wanted to make people aware of. That concludes the report. Questions?
Any questions for Dr. Gabriel?
Is general public allowed to ask a question? Not that report?
No, sir.
No. Or we just have to pay for it? Gotcha.
Next on the report list is,
Dr. Gabriel?
Yes.
I know this is your last report as you go off
Yeah.
into retirement.
Yep.
We didn't make a big to-do about when we approved it on the personnel report, but I think it's fitting tonight to thank you for your years of service with the school district and the meticulous planning that you go through every year in preparation of the budget. I know we pepper you with all sorts of questions. I know as we prepare for salary increases and negotiations and insurance benefits, I'm peppering you with thousands of questions every year, and you have always been gracious in your responses, and I want to thank you for all that.
thank you very much. I appreciate those comments.
And Dr. Gabriel, I think Scott said wonderful things to sum it up. I was gonna say something at the end of the meeting to congratulate you, but I think people, I don't think realize all the tireless hours you put in and all that you have given back to this community and this school corporation. I've been on the board for 6 years, and I've always been impressed when I see your, especially when those slides become lesser and lesser. But I'm always
Well, it's short.
impressed, always impressed when I see the time and the effort you put into it and all that you give us from an informational standpoint. So thank you for your service.
And I appreciate that you take such an integral subject as school financing, which is unlike any other, and can make it so simple and understandable. And the love you have for it really showed through. I mean, you have a genuine love for this kind of thing, and that's what, was needed. So very much appreciate that.
Sorry, Rob, if I beat you.
No, not at all. I'm glad I didn't know when the appropriate time to speak was. I wasn't gonna let the meeting end without speaking, so thanks, Scott.
Strategic planning.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, this evening I'm going to do a report out on the strategic planning update. I do want to say that this is a multiple person input on this, but we thought rather than handing it off to everyone, that they would give it to me to do. So I probably won't do it as well as the rest of the team would have done it, but I will do my best. Now, I know the board has heard some of this before, and so we're going to provide you with just a quick update on strategic planning 2.0. Just going to that first slide, just want to remind the board and kind of just refresh your memory for those of you that might not have been around. When we started Strategic Planning 2.0, the board worked really hard to get as large a number of parent input as we could. We strived to get 100 parents to come out, but we ended up getting over 300 parents to come out and provide input into Strategic Plan 2.0. It was very well attended and got some great input and some really good involvement of many parents. During that process, we also had around 60 people, including board members, parents, community members, teachers, and administrators all participate throughout the entire process, which was over a year long, in putting the plan together. You can go on the website and see the details in the plan, and it will drill way down in, but we wanted to kind of just give you the overview today of where we're at. The other thing that happened in that plan was that vision and mission statement became more codified. We had pieces of that vision and mission statement. The mission was pretty much developed, but the vision at the time really didn't match what we believed our mission was and what we wanted to achieve. And so through the work of all of those people that I just mentioned, we created the vision of all students receiving exceptional educational experiences. So I want to just say, that's been something that's really gone very well. Stacy's done a nice job of connecting that with the hashtag of E3 E3CG, thank you. And so we've been doing that for several years, as long as the strategic plan has been out. Another piece that, before I move on to this, that broke off of this plan was when we were going through, some of you might remember that we had an offshoot of this plan in technology. We had a very intense focus on what can we do around robotics and technology and all of that. That led to a subcommittee that involved mostly community members and business owners. And Mr. Taylor led that process with folks from the Teaching and Learning Department and people in the Technology Department. Extremely successful and led to the creation of the Innovation Center. We got lots of support and donations through various organizations such as Enders Hauser Lilly, to name a couple, and just been very successful. Now houses not just the Innovation Center and where kids go throughout the year from all of our elementaries and get some phenomenal experience from some great teachers, but also to houses our robotics program, which, by the way, has been extremely successful this last year, and super proud of them. So that was an offshoot of 2.0 that I wanted to make sure I mentioned. Another thing that happened, you can go to the next slide, is that in 2.0, beliefs were developed and codified and clarified. And so here you can see the list of beliefs that the organization embraced. And so all of these things that we've been doing, we want to focus on all of these areas. Again, this was formulated in 20, Stacy, help me, 2015, 14?
At least.
15, right? 2015, I believe it was, yeah. 2015. And so you can see a lot of these things today are still there. Things like college and career readiness, our legislators have found an emphasis in that here even just recently. We've been focused on it long before that. Things like social emotional support, you can see that as well on the list. That, again, is something that has developed into, a much higher need than it was in 2015. You can go on to the next slide. We then, our committee of 60 individuals worked to create 6 goal areas and focus on student learning. Those areas were character education, STEM integration, go back a minute, sorry, yeah. Your investment, teacher capacity, connected learning, and learning needs. And so I'm going to dig into each of those as I go. Thanks. So the first is character education. So you can go to that one, thank you. So the district and the committee developed a goal, as you can see here, and worked through character education. When we started, we had a very sporadic character education throughout the district. Every building had a little something different. So the goal here was to organize, pull together, and have a very common character education language. And so the principals worked together with teachers and other staff and began the process of basically organizing and unifying it across all 9 buildings. And so that led into the character education. So you can go to the next slide. Thank you. And so what happens next? What's really interesting about character education and as a strategic planning goal, this has become basically a standard operating procedure for us now. So rather than a goal to accomplish, we've actually done this so well and so often that this is now just a standard operation for our buildings and how we function. What's happening next? What's going to happen next? So we're looking at defining the definition of needs from the focus of personal and social growth to a social emotional learning. And you can see, I won't read all of those to you, but you can see the areas of focus that we plan to follow out now between 2022 all the way through 2023. And our administrators and teachers will be working through these areas to carry 2.0 on. So you can go to the next slide. And STEM integration. So you can see here we had a goal in STEM integration, which was to increase their performance in science, technology, engineering, and math. And so what was accomplished, you can see here some of the items, again, I won't read them all to you, but a lot of training for teachers in this area. It's hard to imagine, but when we started this, teachers did not have a lot of experience with a lot of the technology that we have today. And so now today, a lot of the technology they have in their hands, they've gotten a lot of training on. STEM kits were provided to the elementary students and available to the teachers, and that's the hand-on manipulatives to do different types of activities that's more STEM related. We continue to work on Global Campus, which, who would know, became very valuable during the pandemic, and we were ahead of the game there. And just a couple of other areas you can see. We received national recognition as a community and at state levels. And for our STEM work, and that just continues to go on to this day. So I'll just go ahead and move on. Is there anything else? I'm good? Okay. Good on that one?
While you're
Yeah,
there,
yeah, absolutely.
I've been able to go observe when they do the STEM at the IT, Innovation Center, from first graders up through fourth graders. Phenomenal. And it's amazing what those kids start talking about just because of the manipulatives got put in their hands. And each table has to come up with the same result, but it's, if there's 20 tables, there's 20 ways they come up with that result. And it's just phenomenal to watch those kids and the wheels turn.
Yeah. One thing too I would add is that we've had, as it says here, recognition. We've had schools from all over the state and maybe even out of state come and observe the work that's going on. We know that, I believe it was Plainfield immediately started to develop a facility just like ours. And I think there was another school district as well who came over. And that's great. That's what we do in this industry. We provide that for folks and hope they go out and steal it because they think, what we're doing is great because it is great for kids. Going to the next slide. So the other area of focus, I'm sorry. So the next steps for STEM integration. So as you can see, the STEM courses are being added at the middle schools. We're redesigning the K-5 Elementary Innovation Center piece. Incorporating elements of reading and problem solving and some humanities piece. We're also applying for the IDOE computer science standards into the tech lab specialist time. And then finally next year in 2023, we're looking at middle schools anticipating and proposing differentiated support for their instructional practices to include co-teaching, blended learning, tech integration, and more innovation center visits. I'll pause there. Any other questions on that?
No.
No? Okay. Next is your investment. At the time we were working on this, we were looking to improve safety in the corporation. But one of the things we really wanted to do was really educate people on our investment. Dr. Gabriel does a fantastic job of making sure people have availability to all of our funding. All of our budget information is out there. You can read it to your heart's content and dig in as far as you'd like. But also, too, with Stacy's help, they also make it very simple and easy to understand, too. So it's been great to have that resource out there for parents and community members, and we received a lot of positive feedback from that. We instituted or implemented a marketing plan. A couple of things that we did in that way was we have this Center Grove Ambassadors Program, so we have a few classes of that. The pandemic kind of put a kink in that, and we're excited to get that going next year. But that is, we have people and community leaders that are involved in that. Mayor Myers was a part of that group. We've had some state representatives that live in the district that have been a part of that. We've also had, business leaders and so forth that were a part of that. And that program, it's about 4 or 5 classes, and they come in and they spend time learning about the district and everything that happens in the district. The next part is we had go back a minute, Tracy, sorry. We had the Silver Card program. That's an exciting one. That's where we issue out Silver Cards to folks over a certain age, where then they have free access to all of our programming. Unless the programming is for something like, say, a state competition where we don't get the gate, they're going to have to pay to come in. But other than that, they can go to all kinds of school functions. We also work with our assisted living facilities and provide them there as well. And a lot of times, even like some of our programs, I believe our choir and our drama programs have offered special times just for those individuals to bus in and see a program just, for them. We've added electronic signing throughout the district, as you all know. That's been wonderful to unify that communication. Stacy has control of that, so it'll be really nice to Stacy because she can put things out on that. We've created virtual tours for each school and athletic space. If you haven't seen those are amazing. It's been a great thing for folks that have been looking to come to Center Grove. We hear about that all the time. And again, as I mentioned, the development of the hashtag to highlight the vision and social media and all of the great student performance, academics, athletics, all of that, and people just can track that hashtag and really get the information. So one of the other reasons that we really worked on that, if you remember, we were looking to do a safety referendum at the time, and unfortunately that didn't pass. But we did tell the community that if it didn't pass, we would slowly implement what we could with the budget we had. And I have to say, Dr. Long, Dr. Gabriel have done an excellent job of working that into the budget, writing grants and getting things. We're further along than we thought we would be based on that. Another huge thing that helped us was our involvement with community health. They came in and picked up our nursing staff, which really helped us, and then they provided a lot of social work, mental health support, counseling, or things that we thought we might have to hire. They've come up, they've stepped up, and they've provided a lot of support at no additional cost to us. So with that, been really moving along in our plan. And finally, on that note too, our EOC was accomplished, without raising taxes and having great interaction. Again, compliments to Dr. Long and Mr. Alexander for going out and working with 2 fire departments to come together, join hands, and work to create that beautiful facility and provide safety here on this central campus that we're really fortunate to have. So going on to the next slide, which is your investment beyond. So we're continuing to manage the debt and maintain a steady tax rate. That's something we're really proud of, and the board takes a lot of pride and takes very serious to continue to maintain that steady tax rate. As you know, by looking, you see that tax rate of ours of $1.02 to $1.04. It's substantially lower than most of the school districts around us. But we're able to pay. I've said, you get a great bang for your buck, Center Grove, with what you pay in your tax rate. We've been able to maintain a 7 to 12% cash balance. That's across all of the funds. It can be somewhere between that 7 and 12 cash balance. That helps us in borrowing. A lot of our lenders look for what our cash balance is. We continue to focus on communication in the areas of importance with White River Township residents, and we've increased the exposure to White River Township community through social media, news publications. Stacy puts out a quarterly newsletter to the community that really we provide a lot of. We just had one go out, got a lot of compliments via email from parents and from community members, and some former board members really appreciating that community letter that really highlighted mostly all the academic success we had this year, which was amazing. And then finalized the trademarking, and I don't even know if we've had time to tell you this, but we are finalized as a trademarking. And so our next steps are to figure out how to police it. And so we're going to be talking about that with you and the board. And so those are some things that will be going on. That was a task set before us a long time ago. And if you've ever tried to do a trademarking process through the legal process, it is cumbersome and difficult. And hats off to Stacy for sticking to it and getting all the way through it with our legal team. Moving on to the next one is, and if I have any questions on that. Okay. Moving on to the next area was teacher capacity. And this was a huge one for us. Prior to the Strategic 2.0, we had pretty much a one-person show in our curriculum department. And there was a lot of things that unfortunately couldn't get done, from grant writing or curriculum implementation, instructional pieces. And so as we've grown that department, the things that we focused on was developing a guaranteed and viable curriculum between K-12. And what does that mean? As I'm sure you all remember, what we talked about is that we're going to guarantee that what you're going to get in this school district, whether you go to elementary 1 or elementary 6, is exactly the same. It is a guaranteed curriculum that is across the board. You're going to have that same educational opportunity. And what we are set out to do is going to be viable. In other words, we can get it done. Because if you look at the state standards that the state puts out, it'll take about, I believe it's 23 years to get accomplished. So
If you
we had
did them all.
yeah, and so we had to pare those down and make that more manageable. So you can understand how difficult a teacher's job is just in general. Just going to school and working with anywhere from 28 to 35 kids every day, just on a day-to-day basis, but then having to organize curriculum, having to do lessons, having to do grade books, and and all of that work, and then, classroom management, discipline, all of that, the social emotional needs of the students, the social emotional needs of the teachers, all of those things are just a lot that go on, and I think people really often underestimate the significance of what a teacher does every day. And so with that, we work really hard by providing them with instructional coaches in each building. That's to help them with their instruction. This is probably more popular among our newer teachers that are coming in and just starting to really learn what it's like to teach and really what it's like to teach, as opposed to what you did in student teaching for, a few months. And then also to professional development for teachers to help them, grow as teachers and leaders. And then cross-curricular instruction snapshots. So instructional snapshots, basically teachers work to kind of, put together what are these solid lessons, what are these great things that they do that helps other teachers, figure out the best ways to teach. And then the supported instructional rounds in each building, and just talking about how we use that as well. And so we've developed those. This has been pretty well implemented since 2016. You can go next slide. And what's happening next? So as we continue to go on, what we're looking at is continuing to develop our common assessments and measure student learning and provide learning support. We're looking at ways to on our numeracy and reading instructional frameworks. In secondary, we're developing common assessments and continuing support of quality assessments and feedback, and our learning cadre also for their practices. And then finally, new teachers redesigning programs to support new teachers and collaborate between district administration, building leaders, and instructional coaches. And so that's the work that's moving forward from this. A lot of the work that's happened in teacher capacity has become standard operation. So I'll pause there a minute and see what questions you have or comments. No. Okay, we'll move on to the next one. So connected learning. Wow, did this benefit us, and we had no idea. We started down this path to increase the effectiveness of instruction through instructional technology to improve student learning. And so what was accomplished was a survey that helped us find out what our students had access to, what future we needed to do for PD, professional development, for our staff. We then implemented online courses in Canvas. That grew exponentially, as you know, and became a backbone of what we had to do to get through the pandemic. And then, one of the really neat things was the monthly Twitter chats that were held, and teachers were able to engage in some professional development via Twitter. So the connected learning piece, while it was moving along at the right pace, the COVID hit and it got accelerated. And what really helped us is I know that a lot of the school districts around us said, how in the world are you already there? And it was because of the work that, we had started down this path, several years earlier. So with that, moving forward, our connected learning plan, beyond that, you can go to the next slide. You'll see that we're continuing to develop the essential elements of e-learning to support virtual and blended instruction, to be prepared for that, event that might require that. We're also looking at that, not only that, but also too, there are some instances now where that's become the best practice. Sometimes, as all of us have probably learned, that sometimes it's just better to have a Zoom meeting than to drive all the way across the state for a meeting. So there'll be some opportunities for utilizing the technology. We're piloting the Global Campus Flex program. So we have 30 seniors that will be full online, and that's at their request. And based on need.
Is that our capacity right now, or just a chosen number?
It's the number who were able to, that applied and met the criteria. There were some criteria, we wanted to set kids up for success, so there were some things like had taken a global campus class in the past and been successful, because some weren't. So
And what are some reasons that some of these kids need this?
Some like the flexibility. They can work and do global campus and manage some things that
So it might be
outside
a
school.
family need. Okay.
Family. They also, some just really thrived in the environment when they were in virtual school and wanted to continue that opportunity. As we develop the classes to do this for seniors, it might expand. We also are working with the high school. It might be able to go down to the junior level or maybe become a blended program where kids could part of the day here, part of the day, or every other day at school, at home. So there's a lot of opportunity here. It's kind of nice to have a small group to work out some of the
Yeah,
kinks with.
oh yeah, you don't want to,
And we've been having some students do these things on an as-need basis for medical reasons or different things, but this is our true first, kind of like, that's a section of kids there that we'll get to fully implement that program with.
The other things are some staff PLC courses that will be online through Canvas, and then the digital learning grant. We are a digital learning literacy grant recipient, which is great, and we'll be able to utilize that as well. Would you like to give a little, like, just explanation of what that does for us?
Yeah, so this summer, our Connected Learning team is providing some intense support, volunteer for teachers, but they're able to do it kind of, they're doing a session, an elementary session and a secondary session, and it'll, embedded in that will be a lot of those blended learning techniques. So how can I utilize technology in ways whether kids are sitting with me or not with me, to flip learning. There's a lot of different things. Some of the tools then to do that and giving teachers more training and support for that, so then they can go back. And then if they choose, they can stay in that cadre all year. And the grant lets us give stipends for some work throughout the year and a book study and some really great continued learning. So it's not a one and done. It's a, how do we continue to grow together as a group? And the grant helps us pay for all of that to pay teachers too.
how often do you have to re-up for the grant?
At this point, it's a one-time
It's just a
grant.
one-time shot.
So we'll be able to pay for all this.
Yeah, almost.
Okay.
How many
We'll
we
see.
got?
If we ever look at it again.
Looks
Or
like about 8.
Yep,
we
I'll
might
make a
wanna-
pass.
next summer we might need something different. So they survey our teachers to see the needs, and this was one of the places teachers wanted to learn and grow.
Okay.
Thank you. Next slide. So the next area was learning needs. And as you can see there, we were looking to meet the learning needs of our diverse student body. So even back in that 2015-16 school year, we recognized that our demographics are shifting and changing. And so we're working to provide our staff with the tools they need in order to meet that ever-changing population. And so one of the things that we started with was we developed the PLC model, the professional learning communities. A lot of school districts around the country use this model. And basically, teachers meet and they answer the 4 questions. Once a week they meet as a group. Some of them do it more, but they talk about, as you can see, those 4 questions there. What do we want our students to learn? How will we know when they've learned it? What will we do when they haven't learned it? And what will we do to enrich students who have learned it? And so they focused on that and have become very strong in those questions and work hard on a regular basis, as I shared, to focus on those questions. And that can result in anything. Like I said, they use a lot of data. A lot of times it's student performance data that they're using, probably most of the time. And that can be anything from state data to test local assessments, self-developed assessments, to NWA, which is a big one that we use. So they'll use those things to have conversations around, and those are guided. They're in the building with it could be either their administrators or their lead teacher and or department chairs. So this is the learning needs slide. And so go to the next slide. So one of the things to talk about here, and also at your stations, you'll have a kind of a one-sheet paper we wanted to give you. It's kind of on a black background. You'll see these data points. We've always talked as a board that, the state testing is frustrating. It's changing every 2 years. It's so ridiculous. It's hard to utilize it in a meaningful way because the data changes so often, the test changes. Teachers are scrambling to then figure out, well, what is exactly now the state wants to assess? So what's interesting in 2014, as you can see, amongst our peer groups here, we were ranked 36. We looked at that, and that was concerning for everyone. And as I said, we were light in our curriculum area. So the board said, let's work on this. We looked at through the strategic planning process what to do to improve that area. As you can see, we quickly implemented several things. I can't say that one particular thing helped, but we then made a quick jump up in the following year, got back to where we belonged in those areas. Now, when you look at that data, you can see we're running the same kind of trend line as the other districts that we put there. This is our peer group that that the board selected several years ago as districts to compare ourselves to demographic-wise, financial as well. So they have a similar revenue stream as we do, and their demographics and all of that. So, is there?
And I will share,
Yeah.
so this is our top 5 peers.
Yes.
We actually have 12 peers that are similar to us in demographic size and all of those things. But when you put all 12 of them on here, it looks like just spaghetti thrown on a plate because it's too many
Yeah.
lines. What's important here is we were out of the top 5 before the strategic planning, and now we're in there and we're staying right in that 3rd or 4th spot all the time.
So we're 4th out of 12, not 4th out of 5
Yes,
of
and
our
that's just-
peers.
Of our
That's just
peers.
Yes, peers,
Yeah.
and then the number under at each point then is where we rank in the whole state among all public schools in the entire state, corporations.
Yeah, and that's an important distinction when we say public schools, because when you look at other data, there are, especially from the state, there are, online virtual schools, there's private schools, there's all kinds of charter
Vegetable
schools.
soup.
Yeah, and so it's pretty hard when to try and compare your test data and your scores to them, those that can select who comes into their school, those that can, cancel, contracts and agreement and things like that. So, so we wanted to stay, as the board wanted to stay focused on these peer corporations. A lot of times people say, well, what's going on with Brownsburg, And we had this discussion, if you guys remember, several years ago about this. And one of the interesting things about Brownsburg is the fact that they do a pretty heavy concentration of language arts and math, to the point that students don't receive the other areas unless they are maybe in that 4th question we had, which was, what are they doing, right? So we had this conversation in committee work. We had this conversation with teachers. We're all about a well-rounded student. So, that involved things like science, social studies, all of those things. We did not want those things to not get taught or be put on the back burner. So with that, you can see where we're a lot similar, districts like us who do that. They are very, very myopic and focused on those things, especially at the elementary level. So I'll go on to the next slide. So what's happening and moving beyond, and I'm sorry also too, you do have in front of you a couple of other data points, and I can go over those if you have some questions, but there's iLearn data, and there is also the iRead data as well. And we have some notes on that page for you. So then the last thing is that we're going to continue to move forward with understanding being a professional learning community. We're going to stick with that model and the process of professional growth and continuing to develop that. That's become a standard operating procedure for us to continue working in that area. We're also looking at our enhanced systems and support to response to instruction. You've probably heard us talk about this on and off throughout the years, but this is what we do to help those students, identify those students that need that extra support. And so we have processes in place that teachers and administrators work through to provide students that individual academic support. So they focus on the specific data, and then they implement various techniques, try it out, and then if that didn't work, then they're going to try something else out. So they're interventions. They're just going to continue to try different interventions out, that might be out of the norm that a child might need. So that's the learning needs slide. Is there any questions on learning needs before I move on to the last one? No? Okay, so the last thing really isn't part of strategic planning 2.0, but we wanted to basically give you an update on next steps for facilities because it is part of strategic planning. I will probably defer this to Dr. Long because he just loves to talk about it, so.
We are having a facilities report. If you remember, well, some of you weren't around. In 2012, we'd had a facility assessment done of all of our buildings, and they gave us a kind of a checklist of things that we needed to do to improve them. And we thought after 10 years, it might be a good time to go back and say, hey, what did we get done and what do we still need to do? Just kind of a self-check. We are updating our student potential forecasts along with our building capacity and utilization reports. Make sure that we're still on track with what we're expecting enrollment-wise, and make sure that we're meeting those needs with building expansion. We worked with AECOM Hunt to develop building standards. They met with all of our maintenance guys to talk about what we want in our buildings and what's a traditional building and all the specifications, because as you know, we work with 2 or 3 different architects, sometimes 4 different architects, and they want to put things in or they like something, and this way it's something that's in line with all the rest of our buildings, so it's easier to fix, it's easier to get parts, it's standard with what we're putting in HVAC or hot water heaters or anything like that, and it's really going to help us. So now when we're going to add on to a building or build a new building, we hand them our building standards and ask them to design that with our building standards in mind, instead of going back after they've done it and say, no, you got to change this, this, and this. And then we're also part of our facilities report, and we didn't do this last time, but in the 2012 report, we probably started replacing our lights with LED lights. We've used geothermal wells to try to reduce our costs. So we're going to do a study of our utility efficiency by building to say, to look at, to see if what we've been doing has paid off for us financially. That's about it.
Any questions?
Dr. Long, I'm glad to see the building utilities efficiency study on there. Not only looking at all the good things that have happened and how we've saved, but then ways to keep improving.
Right. Thanks.
On that, sorry, Rob, on that initial CSO report, have we gotten through all the items that were in that report, or do we have anything? Can't believe it's been 10 years.
I know. Probably the big things, and that's one of the things that we're going to do. We'll chart those of what they ask or what they recommended we do in 2012 and what we did and then what's left. So you'll be able to see those side by side to gauge that. And then I think that's a time for us to prioritize, hey, we need to do this. So for example, all of our roofs have been on a roof replacement plan. And so, we're almost finished with that cycle of replacing those roofs. So now we need to go back and say, all right, we got to keep the roofs on there, but what else do we need to keep in our cycle? Kind of get into a preventive maintenance program so it doesn't cost a whole lot. We talked about renovating North Grove and Center Grove Elementary, and it hadn't been renovated in, what, Mr. Russell, 30-some years or...
Well, I wasn't around.
something like that. And so now our goal is to try to renovate those buildings between their 20th and 25th year, so they don't fall into so much disrepair that it costs a lot more money. So we're going to try to head that off. We've got a preventive maintenance program that will spit out all the preventative maintenance that we need to do on our equipment, so we make it last longer, or so we can forecast when it's due to fail because of age, so.
And that's the key, is, as you brought up, is the continuous maintenance. It's a fluid situation, so that budgeting doesn't get surprised.
Right.
You schedule in those roofs, you schedule in new furnaces.
Sure.
It's already ready to go, budget-wise, so there's no surprises.
Yeah, Mr. Thompson and his crew have done a really nice job of getting that preventive maintenance program up and running, and it creates a lot of work at the beginning, to get caught up with that, those monthly checks or everything. But once you do that, then we can extend the life of our equipment a little bit longer, and like you said, we can project when we think we're going to need major replacements.
And it's hard for communities sometimes, as we saw with our pool, that, that's a new pool. No, it's now we're 25, 30 years old already, and we've done all the maintenance we could do.
Right.
But there comes a point that the usage is just a lot more than what I think people phantom.
Sure.
So just kind of to wrap it all up, I just have to compliment the community's involvement in this process. I think this was probably one of the most successful strategic plans, just based on the fact that we have such great community involvement. Like I said, we had over 300 people involved in this process in our community, so it was really great and super successful. Dr. Long, Mr. Taylor, Dr. Gabriel, Dr. Hoover, Conrad, Dr. Nelson. These are the masterminds and the people behind putting this plan into place and making it happen. And so, working alongside all of our staff, whether it was our teaching staff, our bus drivers, our custodians, and everyone else involved in that, just did a phenomenal job of getting this plan all the way through. And as you can see, it was from 2015 to 2019, and this was, the plan that was done in 2019, but then the big dark pandemic hit it, and we stopped as far as what the next steps were. So we picked that back up, and as you can see, I want to compliment finally the principals. And they worked hard with Dr. Nelson and let's say I think it was Mr. Proctor and Dr. Harp, and they all worked to basically assimilate the information that you have in front of you today. So with that, any other questions?
Dr. Arkanoff, if you said this during your presentation, I apologize for asking now, but I'm assuming this update, similar to the strategic plan itself, is available somewhere on our website?
It will be after this presentation, after tonight, yes.
Because
Yeah.
there's wonderful information in here.
Yeah. And so if you go to our website and go any page on our website, go all the way down to the bottom, you'll see strategic planning link. You click on it, and it'll take you to 1.0 and 2.0 and everything in between. And this will be, am I right, Stacy? This will be linked up probably there at that.
On our new website, it's under community.
Okay, so it's under community. Yeah.
Well, and I think a thanks goes out to not only the administration, but everyone in Center Grove, all the employees, the teachers, the, non-certified staff, and everybody else that have been pitching in to make this thing work.
Yeah,
Because it's a true team effort, so thank you, Dr. Arpino,
Yeah,
for
thank you.
being in charge.
Thank you. Next item.
Next item is consent agenda items.
Thank you. This evening, I'm recommending that the board approve the consent agenda as presented.
Mr. President, I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the consent agenda items as presented. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Discussion.
Oh, sorry.
I have a question, and I'm sorry that I didn't catch this when I reviewed the materials. Have we gone to a 3-year contract? Because I got a begin date of 7/1 of 2022 and an expiration of 6/30 of 25.
Yes,
That
for,
normally we are on 2-year.
yeah, normally on 2-year, we have that discussion. You're talking about for the administrators? That's for that administrators list.
Well, it's for level A and B.
Yeah, so those are, everybody but me, but everybody else on that, it's all those administrators. We had that discussion with the board about supporting the 3-year for all the administrators, the principals and all of those.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I forgot.
Okay.
I remember having that conversation, so.
Okay.
You want
And
to
it
table
was
it?
just because of
Vote?
COVID
Okay.
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
And it's, at the moment, a one-time shot.
Okay, once again, we have a motion and a second to approve the consent items. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Next
Let me take just a quick moment and,
Dr. Henderson, would you like to introduce someone for us?
Sure. Dr. Arkoff, members of the board, gives me great pleasure to present to you tonight Mr. Joe Bronkella, along with his lovely wife Colette. He is our new athletic director as of your most recent action here this evening to approve the consent agenda. Mr. Bronkella endured a rather grueling interview process involving 21 or 22 committee members in an initial round, then a second round interview, and finally a third round interview. And we haven't scared him away yet. So he comes to us with over 21 years of experience in education, both as a teacher, as a coach, and as an athletic administrator. Most recently down in Madison and running not only the high school program there, but also the middle school program there. And every sport that they have at the high school, they have at the middle school. He's done that with one assistant and no administrative assistant. So we know he's a hard worker, and we're excited to have him join the Trojan family. So I'd like to welcome him here this evening. Bill?
I'd like to thank you for the opportunity. It's amazing and touring here. Got some great shoes to fill for Mr. Knapp. So thank you again.
Welcome. Absolutely.
you do not have to stay.
Poor guy had to sit through all this.
Next on the agenda is action items. We have one action item this evening.
Yes, thank you. This evening, I'm recommending that the board approve the COVID-related absence forgiveness for employees, and Mr. Taylor's going to provide you with some additional information.
Thank you, Dr. Arkoff. I don't know which one of these is working. This is a returned item. We did this in January for the first semester. At this point, we're bringing this back for the second semester, as many of our COVID absences happened in those first couple months there of the second semester, January and February. So what we're recommending tonight is for the board to forgive all COVID-related absences for the second semester of the 2021-22 school year, beginning January 1st, 2022 and running through June 30th, 2022. Paid leave that was used for a COVID qualifying reason shall be restored for the employee. Employees who did not have paid leave time available and were forced into lost time shall have their wages restored. The cost of restoring these lost wages is $8,871.87. Any changes to that final total, if we have any more absences in the next week or two, we'll bring back as a note on the personnel report in July. And this will be retroactive to the first employee workday on or after January 1st, 2022. This action does not apply to employees with COVID-related absences after June 30th of 2022. So it's just this 6-month period. And that number I spoke to earlier is not a new budget item that we'd add. These are wages that we were planning to pay these people. And the COVID absence made them use lost time and lose those wages. So we're just restoring money that we'd already budgeted. And thank you. I'll turn that back over for any questions or comments.
Thank you, Jason. Any questions for Jason?
Mr. President, I move that we accept the COVID leave as presented.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the COVID-related absence forgiveness for the employees. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is announcements. Dr. Arkoff?
Yes, you've got a couple of announcements here this evening. On July 28th, we'll have an executive session, and followed by the regular board meeting. And so those are the two big announcements for this. Next, your comments.
Any board member comments?
I have nothing this evening.
Okay, with that being said, meeting adjourned.